Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Subscribe there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, or more importantly, Ole Miss every day. It's a lifestyle. Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast extra edition. I'm here with Macon Gillespie, and we are going to talk a little bit about his fall camps about to start. We're going to get his impressions of SEC Media Days because he was there. And he just wrote an article about the quarterback room and what's going on with that. We're going to get his opinion on that as well. So how you doing, John?
I'm doing well. I actually the day before media days, I actually was unable to go to Nashville in person because the transmission in my car is out. So that's an expensive fix. But I was there virtually, I guess you could say. I was credentialed and all that good stuff. So, but outside of the car issues, I'm doing well.
Okay. Outside of all of that stuff, what's your impression from media days?
Well, I thought it was interesting that when Kiffin was in the big room, there was no quarterback question. I really expected that to kind of be the lead question. Had I been there, that probably would have been my question, even though, the local media has their scrum thing before. But I thought it was interesting that, that there wasn't a question on that. There's a lot of big picture stuff, NIL, transfer portal, which, for a lot of reporters, Kiffin is going to provide those quotes, without a doubt. He's going to have opinions on those kind of things. So I understand why that was the case, but I thought some of his comments on that were very interesting. I mean, he said for a long time that he kind of thinks the system is in need of a lot of help, and he kind of echoed that again on Thursday. And looking at the landscape of things, it's hard to argue against that. I know he and Feinbaum have gone back and forth about that, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting just the things he said, big picture wise, and roster management, and how he handled the end of the year last year. Those were my biggest takeaways.
Well, you're talking about the quarterback room and everything, and you wrote an article about the quarterback room. What was your takeaway? How do you think this is going to go, and what do you think is going to separate them?
I think it's Jaxson Dart. If you made me bet right now, I do think it's Dart. I think there's too much noise everywhere for it to not be Dart right now. Now, I mean, I still think it is a battle. I still think that Spencer Sanders or somebody could win it. But I do think that Dart is going to be the guy. And a couple of I read between the lines with some of Kiffin's quotes in Nashville. He talked a lot about leadership, Dart entering year 2 in this system. The players seem to really be behind Dart or really relate well to Dart, have good chemistry, and he's taking care of the football better. I mean, that's been documented well throughout spring and this offseason. So I think that's going to be what separates him mainly is familiarity with the system. Spencer Sanders being injured in the spring, I think that kind of put him behind a little bit. Chemistry with his teammates, leadership, and just overall improvement that we've seen from him. And if you had asked me when the news broke that Spencer Sanders was coming to Ole Miss, I would have thought he would probably be the guy. But my opinion has just changed over the last few months. I think it's going to be Dart.
Yeah, it's a weird situation, and I think Spencer Sanders is going to give it the old college try to win this job. I think Lane Kiffin's going to let him do it. I just think that Spencer Sanders needed Jaxson Dart to show little to no improvement from last year to this year. And when Jaxson Dart did that, there was almost no chance Spencer Sanders could overtake him. Now,
especially with the injury, right?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, with how things were in the spring, because he was not 100%. And for Dart to make the jump he did during the spring, and for Spencer to be as limited as he was during the spring, I mean, that plays into Dart's hand.
So looking at the quarterback room, I agree with you. I do think it's going to be Jaxson Dart as well. I've been on record for a couple of weeks with that. But I think the backup quarterback is actually going to end up, when this is all said and done, Walker Howard.
Yeah, there seems to be some noise around that as well. Now, I mean, Kiffin himself is not going to comment on that. I mean, he's not going to come out and say that. But that wouldn't surprise me at all at this point if that winds up being the case. And there could be a multitude of reasons for that. I mean, Walker Howard is, regardless of what happens with Spencer Sanders next year, he is your future. Okay, he is the guy eventually for this program, or at least that's the plan. So I mean, it would kind of make sense a little bit, in from that perspective. And I think I think the coaches really like what they have in Walker Howard. I mean, I think that to say he's talented is an understatement. We've seen that with his film both before and since arriving at Ole Miss. So I mean, it makes sense on a multitude of facets.
Yeah, and everybody also should be prepared for Austin Simmons to flash this fall.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear stories about him because he can he's a natural thrower of the football.
Yeah. And I think that's, with this quarterback competition deal, I wrote this, I think that Simmons and Howard's name are thrown in. I don't think a lot of people expect them to be the guy this fall. I think that would be a little folly to think that. But they're thrown in there because yes, they're in the room and it has a lot of great depth and they're uber talented. So I mean it makes sense to include them in those discussions. But I do think it's a 2-horse race, Dart and Sanders, and Dart has pulled ahead, significantly.
Yeah. And I think Walker Howard and Austin Simmons, they're actually competing for the 2024 job starting right now.
I agree. Yep.
So fall camp is about to start. Believe it or not, we've gotten to the point where this weekend is the last weekend without college football being a dominant aspect of our life for the foreseeable future. So I hope you rest up, John, and get everything good to go, because starting next weekend or the middle of next week, it's kind of go time.
Yeah, and I think I've rested plenty. The summer's always really slow, in this business as far as covering football. I'm excited for it. I mean, I think the quarterback room is, we've talked plenty about that today, but I think that's going to be the headlining aspect of fall camp. That and Pete Golding's defense. I mean that may be a cop out for me even saying that, but I think those are the two biggest things that people are going to be looking at with this team in camp and the first few weeks of the season. That'll be what most fans are focused on, and so I think that will be most of what we see. And any injury stuff that may pop up, but we can't really predict that. So
I did a video on Friday, and in that video, I talked about how Ole Miss may have on its campus its best receiver since A.J. Brown in Trey Harris.
I saw that in our system. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think people realize how talented this kid is. You look on Twitter, there's one-handed crazy catches. I think because he played in an air raid type system last year, there was a lot of underneath type stuff. But this guy has freakish ability. And if Jaxson Dart can unlock it just a little bit with Quinshon Judkins sitting in the backfield, then this offense has a chance to be really fun.
Yeah, and that I was probably amiss to not mention wide receivers a second ago because I don't think people, with Mingo and Heath now in the league, I don't think people understand the potential this wide receiver room has right now. I think that kind of goes under the radar a little bit because of all the quarterback talk and stuff, right? But I think you and I agree this wide receiver room can be really special. And he would be a big part of that. So I mean, it's kind of become the norm for Ole Miss to have special receivers. And I think even with some new names this year, or some names that fans may not be as familiar with, I think they can be really special.
On my Discord page, somebody just posted in there. Apparently, Joe Burrow was just carted off at practice.
Oh,
yeah. So, yeah,
okay.
that's an interesting little bit of news.
Well, and I'm not a Bengals guy. I'm a Cowboys fan, sadly. But I love Joe Burrow. I mean, I know this is a complete side note from where we were, but I love him, and I hope he's good because he made college football fun in his time at LSU even, and he's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL too. Just his talent and what he's able to do with the football. So hopefully he's all right.
Yeah, and I'll tell John and everybody, whoever has not joined the Locked On Ole Miss Discord, the invite is on my Twitter page and in the description of every one of my videos. At the end of this month, we're going to quit inviting people. It's not going to be open invite anymore. It's going to be a true private message board, but you have a chance for the next month to get there. We're trying to talk John into coming on board with us as well to help us out a little bit. And
once we hang up this conversation, I'm jumping in. So.
Yeah. But it should be a lot of fun. But if anybody's interested in joining that Discord group, we are available for at least August. September, we're going to close down the open invite on it, and we're going to do our Twitter spaces and all that stuff. And it'll be a nice little community for the Locked On Ole Miss family. Now, real quick, predictions for fall camp. What are two things that you think we're going to see?
Let's see.
And you can't say Jaxson Dart winning the quarterback.
I was going to say that. Let's see. I think we were talking about receivers. I think we'll see a couple of names flash in that receiver group that people may not have really thought of during the spring or in the offseason. I think we'll wind up seeing some of that. I want to do something defensively, but I don't know exactly what. I don't know exactly who yet, but I think there will be 1 to 2 newcomers defensively too, who kind of separate, not necessarily separate, but become big names that people get excited for week 1 if they pay close attention to fall camp.
That's Soterian's obviously one of them.
Well, yes, that is one. Let's get the obvious one out of the way. But I think, people sometimes this offseason have not looked at the defensive additions too. And I think there's going to be some outside of Perkins, but I think there's going to be some that make some noise in camp that fans are going to get excited for.
Yeah, I think Jamarius Brown, the defensive lineman at Moss Point, even though they've recruited so many players in that transfer portal, I think Jamarius is going to play. He's a kid that actually played running back in high school, an uber athletic kid. And I think he has a chance to flash. It all depends on his weight. But he's a situation where he was a linebacker, he grew into a defensive end, he grew into a defensive lineman. That's kind of his progression, but he kept all the athleticism. So we'll be able to see him in the fall and how he participates as well. Offensively, I think we're going to see 12 personnel. I've been saying that for weeks. And Michael Trigg's going to line up where Jordan Watkins normally does on certain plays, and they're going to have packages, and you're going to see him and Caden Prescorn on the field at the same time.
Well, it makes the most sense, right? Get your best players on the field at the same time. I mean, that sounds really simple, but I mean, with the way that room is set up, I think it makes a ton of sense for them to be on the field together in certain packages. And yeah, I might should have said that too. I forgot that we had those discussions, but I agree with you there.
Yeah, should be absolutely fantastic to see. And I am so ready for football to start, and it's starting next time we talk, we will be talking about actual football being played. And I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, the itch is almost scratched, as I like to say. I mean, we're almost there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy does a fantastic job covering the league as a whole. Maybe check out Locked On Pac-12 because they have some stuff going on about right now. So check that out. Arizona, by the way, might be real close to flipping as we speak. So it'll be really interesting to see if there even is a Pac-12 come a week from now because it's in danger of seriously folding. Anyway, thanks a lot for that. Thank you, John Macon, for coming by, and we will talk to you next time. Hotty toddy.
All right. Always a pleasure, Stephen. Thank you.